And if we are, so we want to completely skip introductions?
I would say so.
Okay.
Why not?
Wei, are you comfortable with kicking us off?
Sure.
Thank you.
We want every minute with you that we can get.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. So good evening, everyone. My name is Hui Wang, and I am the new Director for Transportation and Development for the division under DES. I saw many familiar names and faces, but I also see some of you that I don't know. So maybe after or later we can introduce, each other. Just give you a little bit background for those of you who already know me. I'm not a stranger to this group, to this committee meeting. I'm also not a stranger to the transportation division. I worked as the bureau chief for TE&O, Transportation Engineering and Operations, for the past about 6 years. And then before that, prior to that, I worked at the Engineering Bureau, who is another team that's although not in transportation, but heavily involved in our projects. So I have seen basically the actions of this committee. I've worked with many of you, and I have also seen the county staff's work from a slightly different angle. I'm excited about this opportunity to take on this bigger role, and hopefully I can bring my experience with me and also learn from you all and try to, form a more collaborative and coordinated work, for transportation and development. I know in the agenda, it asked me what is my priority, and my thoughts. I have to say that I did not put anything sort of in a all-inclusive, preparation. I'm just going to share some of my thoughts with you. I will say in terms of my priority, I will say safety is a priority for me. For those of you who may know, TNO has started the program of Vision Zero, which, so I basically worked with the team from the very beginning of initiating Vision Zero, taking it all the way to board action. And now Vision Zero is this overarching policy that's guiding a lot of our projects and programs. I'm proud of it, and safety is a priority. We want our transportation system to be safe. Another priority would be equity. And this is not the equity for transportation and development. This is equity for the entire county. We want to make sure, and in my mind, equity can be actually seen from different lenses. There are equity, we think about, race, income, sort of area, location, things like that. There's also equity about a different mode of transportation, different user group with different, I would say, ability and disability. So equity really can be seen from different angle. Basically, we're trying to provide that equitable service to all of our users of the transportation system. Another one that I think is very important to our group, which is sustainability. I know we've talked about multimodalism. Used to be, we use that to guide a lot of our work. But I think boil down to the basis, multimodalism is a way to provide a transportation and development model that's sustainable. So basically, this born out of the concept of you cannot just keep building and expanding your transportation system out of the congestion and the environmental impacts. We have to make smarter choice about, how we move people, not just vehicles. And people can be moved with different ways, different means. This committee really is one important piece of the sustainable development and sustainable transportation system. These are some of my initial thoughts. I might have missed one or two, so don't take this to the bank and say that's the only important things. These are the very important things I can think of and I would like to share with you. If you have comments and thoughts of, hey, how come you didn't mention this? Please let me know. You can let me know now or you can let me know later. I'm going to try to stop here without boring you with just me talking. I really want to hear what is your expectation. What are you looking for out of this new leadership? I will say, although it's a new leadership, most of our staff, most of our program, most of our projects, and also our collaboration are continuous. And, we have been doing a good job helping each other identify things that we all want to work towards. So I hope that collaboration will continue move forward. Now I'm really stopping here and listen to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us. We've been looking forward to this. And personally, I'm very excited that it's you in this position because of your expertise and because you know all about the challenges of intersection safety and signaling issues, which I think are something that we can really make progress on in the county. But rather than dominate, why don't I open the floor to everyone here? Maybe we could do hands because I'm sure we have a lot of questions and thoughts to share.
And maybe if whoever has a question could introduce themselves really quick and then launch
Yes.
into the questions. So it's 2 in 1.
Perfect. So who wants to go first? This
Well,
group is
not being
not
able to find
usually
my
silent.
okay, not being able to find my hand button.
Okay.
Hey, Wei, this is Dana.
Hey, Dana.
Yeah, there are a lot of let's call them legacy problems. Really crappy curb cuts, things like that. How can we help you get those things prioritized for repair? Would it help if we went out there and documented where they are? Or at least the ones that are bothering us the most. You're going to get a biased view, but there's a lot of things where basically it was a mistake that somebody made 30 years ago, or 22 years ago, or VDOT made it 70 years ago, and we need to get them fixed, and we need to get them programmed to get them fixed. How can we help?
Okay, so let me make sure I hear you right. So Dana, you're talking about curb cuts. So are you talking about like the driveway entrances, exits that are really generously placed along our roadblock that, many of them could cause challenge in terms of managing traffic and also for the safety of the users. Is that what you're trying to get?
Yeah, I'm talking about those curb cuts. I'm talking about crosswalk ramps. There's a bunch of crosswalk ramps that have these really stupid vertical sidewalls. I'm talking about, our collective favorite, telephone poles in the middle of a sidewalk, and just any of those kind of things that if anybody spent 15 minutes thinking about it 23 years ago, they wouldn't have done it. But now it's your problem. and
Yes.
And how can we help you get them fixed?
Okay, well, thank you for elaborating on the question, Dana. First of all, I will say I agree with you that we have a lot of problems like that. And just a few examples that you brought up, I will say there are multiple ways of getting to them. If it's a crosswalk ramp that sort of, need either repair or need a refresh or need a, quick redesign and rebuild, those could be addressed with, rather quicker actions of some of our either maintenance or safety improvement program. The telephone poles in the middle of the sidewalk, I can't tell you how much I hate them. That will take a larger amount of money for the utility on the ground. We have done some of those. I will get to like how and when we get to those. We have done some of those, like the most recent large project example would be Columbia Pike. And it is also a very expensive investment. I heard somebody joking about it's like we did a utility underground project, and by the way, some road improvement. People are joking about it. So, and then you also mentioned about making sure I'm not missing some of the other things you're talking about. So basically, what I will say is this problem, we don't have to, or maybe we really can't just say, okay, let's set up a project, address this alone. We have to look at every possible opportunity. Look at, like I said, the low-hanging fruit, the rather easier, quicker fix among our maintenance and improvement projects. And when we have development, when we have larger capital projects that's improving maybe a intersection as a whole or a corridor, we look at if we can actually do something about it. I can actually give you some example of places where we would sort of address some of those things. There is the roundabout project, the pilot roundabout project at Military and Nelly Custis. There is a utility pole in the middle of that intersection, a rather large intersection with a lot of pavement and, really challenging turning situation and a very challenging situation for pedestrians who typically they try to avoid that area. By relocating the pole and by actually rearranging the traffic flow using a roundabout, currently it's still interim improvement, it would actually address some of the pedestrian and the cyclist accessing problem. So this is an example of us taking every opportunity to look at what we can improve. Unfortunately, I don't think there is like a flip of a switch that we can solve everything, but I do agree with you that these are problems we need to address. I see there's a hand up.
Yes, Collier.
Hello, I'm Collier Cook. I'm in the Ballston neighborhood, and welcome and thank you for joining us tonight. We really do appreciate it. My comment and question is regarding, Arlington's a really dynamic place where a lot of development's happening. And it just was last week, the planning director, Anthony Busarelli, talked about the large pipeline of projects that are coming, which is great. But those projects impact our transportation network, especially for bikes and folks on foot. Here in Ballston on Fairfax Drive, we have 3 different projects all impacting Fairfax Drive, and they'll impact it differently. One has the bike lane blocked, but has a sidewalk. And the next one has both the sidewalk and bike lane maintained. And then the next one is sidewalks closed, but the bike lane's maintained. It seems to me, and maybe it's just perception on my behalf, that it's sort of it's in this sort of limbo state, between DES and CPHD with their sort of process. And I don't want to say that it's not a priority, but it seems like things are falling through the cracks sometimes on either maintaining safe ways during construction, allowing people to go through. I mean, people are walking in the bike lane even though there's no sidewalk. There's signs that tell them not to walk there, but people are people, and I believe in much more of a harm reduction approach and assume people are going to walk and provide space for them, even if that takes away from parking spaces or even a travel lane. So it's not so much of a question, but is that something you would like to focus on? Because that was something you mentioned at the beginning, was talking about safety.
Yes, and thank you. That is indeed a issue that we are aware of, which is what we call MOT, management of traffic. So basically, when you talk about the CPHD pipeline and the sort of the coordination with transportation, I can actually assure you that we work very closely together. We have a entire team designated to work with CPHD, and we incorporate our process early on in the development site plan to look at their design, to look at the transportation facility, to look at what community benefit we can get out of the transportation side, and also to look at the management of traffic, making sure that the construction is planned well. Of course, what's planned sometimes doesn't really translate into what's implemented, because the contractor may miss something, they may, due to a pinch of timeline or something. So there's another piece, which is inspection and enforcement. DES has gotten additional inspector resource for our right-of-way inspector group. So we actually, I think it's last year, we actually gotten a couple additional staffing resource. Is that enough? If you ask me, we can always use more. But it's better than what we had before. It gives us more boots on the ground in terms of looking at it. You may be aware that we also created a report a problem item where people who see something can immediately go in there and say something. That those requests or problem report directly goes to our inspector group, where they can go to the ground and confirm things if things need to be corrected. To the degree of if projects are in severe violation, they may actually get a stop work order. Now, when it comes to like a place like Boston, when you have a lot of development going on, Boston is one of those. There's other commercial area where, development is just, everywhere. There is a problem with, coordination. Like, one project, its plan may look okay, but the next one, when that starts, they may not be, connecting to each other. This is something we have realized, and we have started to put more attention in help coordinating that. Am I thinking that everything will just go as planned and nothing would go wrong? I actually think sometimes, things will happen in the ground. So I will also encourage our community to actually see something, say something, and allow us to be alerted and go in there to correct things.
Thank you. And I see that Steve has his hand up.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for that. So when it turns out that, say, a couple of adjoining or nearby projects don't coincide well, they create, maintenance of traffic issues that are just inconsistent for the users, whoever they happen to be, what do you do? I mean, you already approved the plans for each of the sites independently, but together they're, inconsistent or incompatible. Do you ever change the plans? Do you ever require the contractor to change what they're doing? I mean, I've never seen that happen. Actually, I've never seen anything change in any maintenance of traffic issue. That seems to be a huge hole in what happens. So, can you give me an example of a time when you've actually made a change to a plan because a nearby project impacted that one?
Yes, I actually have examples of things changed, and things actually sometimes change often. The example I remembered was the Heights School along Wilson at Wilson and Queen. That corner, when the Heights School was being built, there's also the fire station 10 and the apartment building next to it that's being built. There's also another project that's actually at north of 18th Street that is a park, a project that's being built. So there's a lot of construction happening at that moment. And there are, conflicting of MOT, and we, by saying we, back then I was the TNO bureau chief. We actually did work with the developer to adjust their MOT plan from the construction timing in terms of who gets to get into the right of way and do what, to how the bike lane is being routed outside of the building, the construction zone. I remember that part was we taken the parking space and allow, bike lane to continuously go on the north side of Wilson. So of course, there's also additional challenges. There were temporary crosswalk being built. There were temporary pedestrian push activated flashers being introduced to basically help reduce the impact. Still, it's huge impact on all modes at that construction period, but change did happen.
Yeah, and a follow-up, do you have examples of where contractors have actually been fined or stopped to be able to work on things because of maintenance of traffic issues?
I don't have anything about fine, sort of by my recollection, I can look into that. But I've had times when we tell the contractor to stop. I recall actually just a few months back, there was some contractor taking additional lane. Let me think, which road was that? I think it's in Crystal City. They take additional lane without being actually approved. It's not on the approved plan. So I remember I seen the email coming in and they asked us, hey, is this what you guys approved? We responded no. Actually, police and our inspector both went out and stopped them.
Dana, did you have something to add?
Yeah, to the MOT issue, you were talking about Boston. Crystal City is just an absolute crap fest. You can see, you see a sign that says road work stop, end of road work, and then 20 feet later there's a new sign that says, road work ahead or construction ahead. And in reality, what would seem to be obvious would be that Arlington would take charge of the MOT and say, if you want to be an MOT in Crystal City, you'll come in as part of our MOT, this broader MOT, and we will actually integrate them. And then also publish the things. It's a scavenger hunt. There are signs up there that says, if you think a tree is being threatened, call this number. But there's nothing for MOTs. And most MOTs you can't even find. And I'm more than willing to discuss this offline. But it's a serious problem, because if there's not an MOT on site, or if there's not an accessible MOT, it's hard to say whether it's just a crappy construction job or whether they're in violation.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're in violation and they're getting away with it, then obviously enforcement is a problem. And along those lines, when you do MOTs, you need to extract a commitment from the builder, from the developer, for parking for Arlington County vehicles. Arlington County vehicles consistently park in bike lanes while they're doing construction inspections. And if Arlington's not going to be a lead goal or a bike-friendly community inside the county government, then they don't have any chance of getting anybody else to do it.
Yeah, thank you for the comment, Dana. And by the way, I think I've seen the conversation about Arlington County vehicle, not just bike lane, they need to comply to all of the, signage regulation and everything. Basically, so that is something that we are looking to double check on if that's on our driving policy, or if not, we need to add it in. So that is something we're looking into. And by the way, for those of you who have raised issue with me, I do understand, acknowledge, and also agree that even myself, walking, biking, or driving in Arlington, I've seen problems. So me giving you example of something we did doesn't mean I'm saying, oh, we did nothing wrong, everything's great. It's just say we can do things right. And I hope we can actually expand the good things that we do and make that a part of the normal.
Thank you. Does anyone else have a question? Anybody else? All right. So I just want to emphasize that we would love to be your eyes and your ears. I mean, you've got great ones. You're an expert, and you know the territory. But we're out there on our bikes all the time, and some of the people on this committee, can describe in depth every curb cut and intersection in the county. So if you think of ways that we can work together and provide information, we would love to have that relationship and to supply you whatever we can. I see that now Dana has a hand up, and Majdi. Let's go to Majdi, because Majdi has not yet spoken.
Yes, if I may ask, what are your thoughts on the speed humps that are designed to reduce the speed of traffic in the neighborhoods? I think there are areas where they would be useful, but it doesn't seem like the county's interested in using that technique to slow down traffic in the neighborhoods.
Thank you. Thank you for that question. I would say I've learned some of the history about the speed hump and about the traffic calming program in Arlington that predates me, but I did understand that at one point, we are introducing the speed hump or devices like that more frequently. And then what I've learned is there were community disagreement about are they useful, where should we put them. So that program was then later put on moratorium. So those are just histories I've learned. Let me tell you what we have done is through the Vision Zero program, we have brought back vertical deterrence. Speed hump being one, raised crosswalk could be another one, and there may be some other, various devices that provide that vertical deterrence. We have added that back into the Vision Zero toolbox, meaning it is a valid tool to address speed management issue. It is not the only tool, so there are other things that we may try and we may, incorporate. But speed hump can be identified, location can be identified, and the speed hump can be added. We want to make sure when we are adding them, we are doing basically a data-driven and factual based, and also we want to make sure the community, the neighborhood, who's gonna experience those more frequently, have a sort of general agreement on having those. one small item that may be coming soon is in the school slow zone process. We all realize a school zone is a critical priority area where we want to further reduce speed and making sure our most vulnerable pedestrian and cyclists are safe. So in the school's slow zone, there may be some additional vertical deterrence related, I would say, projects coming up. I will not steal the thunder from Christine because I see she's here already. But just to let you know that more of those type of device are heading our way, and we're trying to be creative and nimble at the same time.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so very much for joining us. And I hope that we'll see you again soon. And I look forward to any ideas you have about how we can coordinate and work together.
Thank you, Cynthia, and thank you, everyone. I also want to make sure that I know BAC is represented in our Vision Zero external stakeholder group. We actually rely on you all as well to be our voices, to help spread the news, to help educate, community about how we can actually share the rather constrained right away and make it safe and effective for all modes. So thank you in advance for you helping us.
Thank you so much.
All right.
And I believe that Christine is here to talk about Vision Zero. Hello,
Yes.
hello. Thank you for coming.
Of course. Thanks for having me. I'm going to pull up a presentation now. All right. Can you see the presentation?
Yes.
Awesome. All right. So for those who don't know me, I'm Christine Baker. I'm the Vision Zero Transportation Safety Program Manager. And the request today was for more information about how we prioritize quick build projects. So that's kind of what the presentation is built around. But I also threw in a few updates. So tonight I'll cover just kind of what the safety prioritization looks like, starting with kind of how we identify a safety project, and then kind of get into the details for quick builds. I won't be able to talk as much about capital projects because that's not my realm, but I can help lead you to any resources if you need following this. And then I also wanted to talk about systemic applications because I know y'all had questions about LPIs and no turn on red, so I can talk a little bit about that. As well as give you some updates on, we have an equity analysis that's going to be released next month. I'm very excited about that. We're updating our high injury network, and April is going to be Vision Zero month because we have lots of engagement coming. So I'll let you know a little bit about that beforehand. But first we'll jump into project prioritization. So I grabbed this graphic from the Vision Zero toolbox. As Hui mentioned, the toolbox is an amazing resource. I can send links to it once I am done presenting. But this graphic is within the toolbox, and it shows you how we identify a safety project. And there's a lot of different routes that projects take. So first, we start by identifying a potential safety issue, and that can come in through safety data analysis. We have a hotspot analysis that we do every year to 2 years to look at where there were a lot of crashes in certain specific locations. We also have a high injury network that we have used to identify areas that have disproportionate amounts of crashes that result in severe injury, and that's on a corridor basis. So we can identify projects on the HIN. When we do our audits, we do walking audits on all the corridors. And we also do systemic analysis, and we do an annual report where we look at specific safety issues. So there's a lot of way when we use data that we can identify projects through the Vision Zero proactive work. There's also capital and development projects that come up. So for example, if a capital project is near an intersection where we might have a desire to make some kind of safety improvement. That's a great way to lump those projects together and have them executed under one construction project. And that just kind of helps expedite everything, or not expedite, but it makes it, being able to bring the resources together. And sometimes it can make it more cost effective, or kind of escalate projects. And then there's planning studies, which can ultimately lead to projects, like the Core of Roslyn study, for example, and then community feedback or requests. So anything that comes in through report a problem could lead to a project, or we get feedback a lot from APS or ACPD, and that also kind of comes in the queue. So all those kind of funnel into how we identify a project. And then we analyze the location. So we can look at crash data, speed data, operational data, behavioral. Sometimes we put cameras out and we just watch it for a couple of days and see what happens at that location. It depends on what the issue is, but we can look at different performance metrics, like, are people yielding? And if we find that there's not really a safety issue, we don't really take any further action. We'll respond to wherever the inquiry came in, and that's kind of something that can be reevaluated later on, if needed. But if there is a safety issue confirmed, that's where we'll start to identify what's the right tool within our toolbox, or maybe a set of tools to help address that problem. And we also, as I mentioned in this call out, we identify any overlapping projects or initiatives where we could coordinate and help to, again, kind of lump projects together to have them, make sure they're coordinated and ensure that they kind of are done on a timeline together. When we look at selecting tools, that's where we get into, is it just signing and markings? And those projects are really easy to put in usually. So we just have to make sure we're coordinating with the contractors, and it's a time where we're able to do we can do signage year round, but markings, they typically need to be done in nicer weather. And tactical work can also be done pretty quickly. So we don't really have prioritization for signage and marking projects. We just do them as soon as we see an issue. When you look at quick build projects or capital projects, though, that's where we have limited funding. So that involves prioritizing those projects. So how do we prioritize those quick build projects? When we see we want to, for example, a quick build project would be something where we build curb extensions. That's a really common type of project. Or we build a pedestrian refuge, or we upgrade ramps, and maybe add RFBs, the flashing beacons, where you push and it helps you to be more visible when you cross. Quick build projects can also include things like speed feedback indicator signs, or any really small scale construction project that helps to improve safety. Capital projects are usually when you start to get over the 200,000 mark. They can include curb work, additional sidewalk work, even building signals, things that are much larger in scale, and they typically will take a longer time to execute. So quick build projects will typically take between 1 to 3 years. I know 3 years is not quick in the scheme of things, but it just kind of depends on the coordination. Sometimes there's easements required that will kind of hang up that quick build process. But they're intended to be pretty short, executed within a year. And then capital projects typically take a little bit longer than that, and they undergo more public engagement. So looking into the quick build, kind of fine-tuning that lens. And when we do a quick build project, step one is we rank with prioritization criteria. So right now we rank, is it on a high injury network? Is it an identified hotspot? Or does it have a recent crash history? And the difference between the hotspot and the crash history is that our hotspots, as I mentioned, are kind of done on a semi-annual basis. So there could be crashes that have happened since that analysis, and we want to still take account that those crashes occurred as we rank projects. We also see if it's in an equity emphasis area. And I'll talk a little bit more about equity in my updates, but we have identified the Title VI FTA areas identified because they are either lower income communities or communities that have higher percentages of people who are Black, Indigenous, or people of color. So we prioritize projects in those areas, as well as if they are near a school, We also look to see if there's tactical projects in place, which help us build out some of those improvements that we have already installed that are working. We rank if it also gets prioritized if it's helping to address a systemic need. So if we identify a problem in one place, we want to fix it in all the other places like it. That project can be escalated. And then another huge factor in this is the complexity of implementation, because as I mentioned, quick build projects are intended to be those smaller scale projects. And sometimes once we get the survey, which is when the surveyors go out and look at the land, they will come back and say, or we'll come back and we'll find, there may be easements involved. They, like engineering, the stormwater drainage, like there's just like unforeseen issues that really escalate the project. It's like when you're doing housework, and you have a contractor come and you find out that one little problem actually is all these other problems. That can kind of happen when we go to survey with our projects. So when that happens, sometimes it kicks a project out of the quick build category into the capital projects category, or it just makes it kind of a not feasible project. So that's why step 2 is really important. Once we rank them, prioritize the criteria, or rank and prioritize the projects, we send the top projects over into survey. And then the survey will confirm project specifications and identify which of those projects are feasible within that quick build timeframe. And as I mentioned, like this is like the key step. A lot of times we find out we can't do a project or we have to push it to capital once we get to that step 2. And also the survey turnaround time is really bad right now. So we are having a hard time getting it back within, I think we requested stuff about 6 months ago, and we're still waiting for a lot of it back. So it's just a way, one of our pinch points in this process, but we're doing the best we can and always trying to be ahead, sending as many projects as we can. I think this year when we ranked and prioritized projects, we actually still sent them all to survey. So that just shows kind of how we are proactively trying to make sure that we have a good selection of projects to move forward into step 3. And that's once, we have our list of quick build projects for implementation within 1 to 2 years. And that's the project list that we work with, throughout the year. We're going to get all that information up on the website and communicate it out, which I'll show in the next slide. But any projects that didn't make it through step 1 will remain in the queue for the next project ranking, which again, we try to do in the winter each year leading into the spring construction season. And then projects that are deemed too quick or too complex for the quick build process get kicked over to the capital program, and they have a different ranking process, which we'll talk about in a second. But looking at that quick build project workflow, as I mentioned, typically in the winter, that's when we try to prioritize those quick build project candidates and get the survey. We actually kind of started doing this in the fall this year to try to get that survey, like I mentioned. And then we identify the builders. Sometimes we build in-house, sometimes we build, using a contractor, and what that timeline looks like. Then come spring, we get all that content up on the website. We have a wonderful quick build project website. It's not totally wonderful yet. I'm about to revamp it. Hopefully it'll be a little bit easier to read then. And then we're also going to create and post information packages about upcoming projects that can be messages out to listservs. We're going to be really proactive about that this year. Civic associations, and getting that out on social media as well, so everyone knows, like, hey, here's the list of projects to expect in the next couple of years. And then come summer and fall, we'll send the construction notices within 2 weeks of construction as we build the projects. And that way, people know it's coming. It's not a surprise once you get that notice that says, hey, the construction is coming to your neighborhood in a couple of weeks. And then we also have started doing before-after cut sheets for all of our projects, so you can see what the pictures look like at the project before and then after. And we're actually just starting to get into before-after crash cut sheets. We have to have a couple years of crash data before we can go back and do that recap, assess crash rates per year before and after the improvement. But we're starting to do that, and it gives us an idea of like what projects are working well, what types of tools are working well. And we'll be posting all that information next month along with the annual report. And we're going to do a lot more of that going forward, so you can see the outcomes of the projects that we are producing. And then I have a note on this slide also. any high priority quick build projects that come up. For example, if there's a critical crash, we did tactical improvements at John Marshall and Little Falls, for example, very quickly this year. It kind of went outside of the typical quick build process, and that was to get things on the ground very more expeditiously. So this timeline is general, but not every single project is going to end up following through it. So I will stop there. Are there any questions on the quick build project prioritization or workflow?
Eric, do you want to jump in with your question that's in the chat?
Oh yeah, sorry, I have not been looking at the chat.
Yeah, this is Eric Goodman. Just wanted to know, how does this prioritization quick build process interact with the Neighborhood Complete Streets program, which also has potentially projects of similar size?
We check with each other to see if any of our projects are overlapping. For example, we saw the list of all the candidate projects for NCS, and if it's an NCS project and they are moving forward with it, then they will move forward with that in their process, and we won't have it in our list. But I think to this day, we have not had that overlap. So typically they have more segment based, where it'll be like a block of sidewalk or like an entire block. Typically ours are more spot based, but we do talk to each other just to make sure we're not overlapping in any way. Dana?
Yeah, how does what input is Vision Zero through the Vision Zero lens? What input have you provided to the Route 1 study?
We have specific staff that are assigned to that study, and they are assessing with the safety point of view. So I have not done it personally, but I know that there are colleagues within our engineering department who are fully aware of the top safety priorities and are providing that feedback.
Okay, will you commit to go talk to them and make sure that they're doing it through the Vision Zero lens? Because
Absolutely.
the project seems to be moving forward and doing what, VDOT's going to do what VDOT's going to do.
Okay.
And they're going to decrease the amount of they're going to decrease the safety on Route 1.
Okay, I took a note of that, and I'll coordinate with folks and make sure that we've got the right people at the table and we're keeping safety in mind, because that's really helpful to know where we need to advocate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And those staff are more than welcome to join us for a meeting, and we could talk things through if that would be helpful.
Okay. Yeah, I will look into that.
Thank you.
All right. So as I mentioned, capital projects also go through their own prioritization, and their criteria look a lot like the Vision Zero ones. Only since they are capital projects that are kind of taking into account everything, not only safety, clearly safety is our focus. Quick build projects are really, within the Vision Zero core work effort. Capital projects are going to look at feasibility and support, equity, health and safety. So that's where the crash histories, school zones, active transportation, those weights are really high. Since Vision Zero, we've, pushed to really escalate the weight that the crash history being on an HIN or a hotspot holds. And then of course there's funding, grant opportunities, developer contributions. The functionality and connectivity is important, as well as synergy, like I mentioned, complementing existing projects or maintenance needs. And so capital projects are programmed within a 2-year budgeting cycle, and they have detailed community engagement for each project. And like I explained in this slide, quick build projects are they're intended to be nimble. So that's, we communicate them out, but because it's a safety need and because it doesn't really change too much of the structure of the roadway, it's more, building out curbs or, making improvements that enhance the safety of a specific location. It doesn't require the same level of community engagement as would a capital project. So systemic safety, that's where I mentioned systemic safety is where you identify a problem in one place. So for example, we know that RFBs are really helpful on multi-lane uncontrolled crossings, because sometimes when the RFBs are the flashing lights, if a car is stopped in the close lane as you're approaching the intersection, so say you're in the far right lane and then there's somebody on the inside right lane and there's a person crossing the street, you might not see them because that other car is stopped and blocking. And so the intent of the RFB is that it flashes, and then even though you're approaching that crosswalk and you might not be able to see that person because the other car is blocking it, you'll see the flashing light and you'll know, hey, somebody's there, I need to slow down. So that's why RFBs we typically use at those multi-lane uncontrolled crossings, because it helps with that multiple threat. So that's an area where we can do systemic safety application. Hey, we know this is a problem in one place. Let's try to do it in as many other places like it as we can. RFBs is, a complex example because they're expensive. So we can't just put them at every single location, but that's, one of the, that's a good example of how we can prioritize quick build projects, which often entail RFBs. But when we do systemic safety application, we find the problem, we find all the other places like it, and then we look at the breadth of that. So it can depend on the scale or the volume of improvements. And then we decide, can we do it everywhere? Can we do it at a few locations? Do we prioritize it on our high injury network? Do we do it at hotspots? Do we focus on equity emphasis areas? So those systemic safety applications truly depend on, how expensive is it to deploy? How much time does it take to deploy? And how much are we really talking when we look at the magnitude? So those really are dependent on the scale, but one example where we did things countywide was the stop bars. We put stop bars at every single stop sign because we know it actually helps people to remind themselves to stop. We also are doing school zone retrofits countywide, adding the school slow zones and retrofitting the school zone to make sure all the infrastructure looks the same. It's another thing we're doing countywide across the board. We recently did the markings slow school crossing as you approach crossings. These are typically one lane in each direction on arterials and school zones. So we did that on Patrick Henry and had positive results on yielding. So we're going to be doing that at all of our uncontrolled arterial crossings and school zones, which is about 12 locations. And then this leads into the leading pedestrian intervals and no right on red, which is one thing you all asked about, how do we decide where we put those? So we prioritize the systemic application of those two combined tools because we like to have the no turn on red with the LPI. It's actually required in our guidelines because it prevents someone from turning into that leading pedestrian interval. And we did that on our high injury network corridors because we know and it was specifically corridors where we know there's a lot of pedestrian activity. So it was, Wilson, Clarendon, Fairfax, Columbia Pike, 4 Mile Run, actually, I think is almost all of them have LPIs there too. And that was how we selected those locations. Now we also do it on a spot basis. Like I mentioned, that's like one of the go-to things that we look at when we're assessing a hotspot. Can we put an LPI and no turn on red there? So that's why they are where they are. And then, as we look for future applications beyond just those systemic ways we looked at it, again, hotspot analysis and when community reports come in, we also look at that. So that's systemic. Any questions on that one?
I imagine we all have many questions. I can start, I suppose. So on the RFBs, on the flashing lights, my impression is that they often provide a false sense of security, that they're not enforceable, and drivers like on Shirlington Road, they just plow right through. And I mean, I've watched it. I've been crossing, dozens of times when that has happened. And I'm just wondering, is there any way to make them enforceable or combine them with a camera, so that people do get tickets ultimately, or some way to give them a little bit more oomph, and make them just a bit more serious, because a lot of drivers don't take them seriously.
That's a great question. So they are enforceable for an officer if the person has stepped foot into the crosswalk. They are required to stop for that person. So we have done details at different, we try to do high visibility details occasionally where someone steps out, and then they try to give the vehicles enough time to properly stop, and then if they don't, within, even though they have that nice advanced warning, that the person has walked out, they can be ticketed. So that's one way that they can be enforced. But we cannot do cameras. We're only allowed to use automated enforcement for red light running and for speeding in school zones or work zones right now. So that's just not an option under current Virginia state law, but that's something that would be amazing to have in the future. Because the more we can automate things, the better I think compliance will be, and it removes any bias in enforcement. So we're all about automated enforcement, and that's an area where we can advocate legislatively.
Right. I have more questions, but who else wants to ask something?
I do have a little bit more.
Okay.
I have those updates, like I mentioned. So I'll run through them real quick. We
Great.
just did a transportation safety equity analysis. So we looked at the equity emphasis areas that I mentioned, as well as crash data, driver origins, which is available through crash reports. We looked at systemic risks in equity emphasis areas, and we looked at the dispersion of community requests, where we get them from and where we don't hear from. And we also looked at hospital data. And the findings helped us to identify disproportionalities and trends relative to BIPOC or lower income communities. And we reviewed all this with an interdisciplinary steering team. This started really small, and this project is really near and dear to my heart. We worked really small with people doing in-house analysis, and it just kept growing and growing because we became more interested, and we actually ended up bringing in a third-party consultant to help us with quality assurance of all the work we did, and they helped us compile it into a beautiful report. And what's coming out of it is a set of 10 action items that help elevate equity emphasis areas as we do safety analysis, as we prioritize projects, as we engage and educate the public, and as we look at proactive safety improvements and a way to look at that over time. So that's coming out next month with the Vision Zero annual report. We're going to do an information item to the Transportation Commission on April 27th, and we're also going to address the county board. I will be talking with, I think, our DEI chief on the 25th recess meeting. So you'll see this coming up in the pipeline, and it's just a really great way to make sure our resources are going exactly where we need them, in places where they may have been underserved before. So that's something coming up soon. We're also updating the Hydri network, like I mentioned, and this time it's going to be a little more sophisticated analysis. We're going to do a corridor or sliding scale methodology. We're going to weight by severity and normalize that by functional classification. And we're going to exclude the interstate. So that will be released with the annual report in April as well. And I know a lot of people thought that the analysis we did on the first one was a little simple. So I hope that this kind of helps to address that need. We're also using a larger amount of data, 5 years rather than 3 years, to help accommodate for like pre and post COVID patterns. We have our annual safety feedback engagement in April. That means coming at you in library stands. We're going to have sidewalk stickers, lawn signs, emails, Facebook ads, pop-up events, in-person events. I'm doing a Vision Zero community walk with Walk Arlington on Saturday, April 15th. We're going along Fairfax Drive. So definitely look out for that email from Walk Arlington, sign up. I will be talking all about the improvements we've done since we acquired that road from VDOT in 2018. And we're also going to be doing focus groups really focused in on schools. So we'll learn a lot more about safety around our schools. So the report is going to come out in April. Our open house will be Wednesday, April 26th at the Arlington Mill Community Center. And we're going to be talking all Vision Zero. We'll be talking about, the equity analysis, before and after studies, and all the things that you want to talk about. So please mark your calendars. Wednesday, April 26th, we will be at Arlington Mill Community Center and excited to chat. So that was everything I had, but now we can jump into any other questions too.
Wonderful, thank you. Does anyone want to dive in with a question?
Yeah, sure. This is Dana. Okay, there's the Virginia law on crosswalks is a little dicey. It says that pedestrians have the right of way if they're in the crosswalk, but they shouldn't go in the crosswalk if they don't have the right of way. Is there any chance you can get somebody from the Commonwealth's attorney to clarify what Arlington's position is, and then put it and do bill stuffers? Arlington sends stuff out to every resident, or most of the residents, several times a year. Bill stuffers would be a great way to educate the resident, because the average person ain't going to just show up on the Vision Zero website and discover that what they thought they understood about crosswalks was wrong. And when you're sending the bill stuffers out, send them to the police department too, because I don't think they get it either.
We actually just got a contact with Treasury, and we're looking into doing bill stuffers this year. I think we might be able to do it. And we are going to focus in, I think, on two of our biggest pain points, which are speed and alcohol. So speed is involved in 1 out of every 4 severe crashes, and alcohol is involved in 1 out of every 3 fatal crash that we have.
So
those are going to be, I think, our focus to help educate the community.
If I might push back so you think telling people that they shouldn't drink and drive in a bill stuffer is going to cause them to change their behavior?
We are hoping that adding stats and ground truthing it to Arlington will be helpful. Because I think it is pretty staggering that 1 out of every 6 every 3 fatal crashes that happen in last year it was 3 out of 4. I'm not arguing
the point. I'm just questioning whether the intervention is effective. I think you'd be far better off educating them on crosswalk safety.
I hear you. I see what you're saying. Well, we're investigating that option though, and I agree though that's the best way to get to people, especially people paying car taxes.
So I have a question about LPIs. I cross Columbia Pike every day, and I find the 2-second LPIs kind of a joke, because cars are still plowing through, even though they have the red by then. But just 2-second LPIs are just not helpful. And I'm wondering sort of who determines how long these LPIs are, and whether we can have any influence over that, and whether they could be longer.
Sure, that's I know we would always love to have the LPI be as long as possible. A lot of times it really is a crunch to try to be able to put it in, especially along corridors where there are high volumes. Our signals team assesses each one, and they determine what is appropriate. And we always say that some is better than none. So, I hear what you're saying, though. 2 is not a great number. I don't even know if we do 2. I thought that the lowest we did was 3, but I'll bring that feedback back to our team. And Hui, I see you popped on, so maybe you have some special
yeah,
feedback.
I didn't leave. I'm keep listening to it. So Cynthia, we can go back and double check. I don't think we do 2. I think the minimum we do is 3 seconds. And then, industry sort of standard, the longest wouldn't be longer than 7. I will say it's harder to find the longer period of time in Arlington because our cycle length is short. Our cycle length is around, 95, 100. If we go to 120 seconds, that's actually a long cycle. Not unlike, many of the VIDA intersections that can go really 2.5 minutes long or even 3. So, but we can certainly double check. Maybe the ones that you feel like only 2, it may be 3, but we can, 1 second, who can really tell the difference? I can tell, I don't tell the difference. So we can go back and check, see if there's a longer period that may be needed.
I also have a question about beg buttons and whether we can get rid of them at least by the schools, and in areas where there are often more humans than cars, or at least a lot of people walking and biking, and it's because so many signals do not identify bikes. It makes it really tricky to have to get up on the sidewalk or cross illegally. But next to hospitals, next to schools, we seem to have to beg to cross legally.
Christine, you wanted me to take this one?
Yeah,
too?
I figured that's in your wheelhouse.
I'll take this one too. First of all, I will say we have introduced the pedestrian automatic recall at many corridors, just like you said, Cynthia, about the high pedestrian activity corridors. Columbia Pike is one. RB corridor is another one. And I believe there's also a long stretch of like Crystal Drive in the National Landing area that these are sort of our typical high pedestrian activity corridors. Locations where we have trail crossing, like 4 Mile Run. We have the bike trail, the trail crossing. Those places are also automatically having the pedestrian cycle. There may be other locations where, like you mentioned, school. We actually have done something with school is we work with APS, ask them to identify the places where they actually see problem. And we have done the arrival dismissal time auto recall. So basically, when we are mostly anticipating the kids, coming or leaving school, and also parents driving there, those are the period of time we introduce that. There are some locations where, if it's not this peak use time, the pedestrian level severely drops down. Those are the locations we retained some of the push button activity. Again, typically what we do is it's very hard to do just one signal. We try to find maybe, a few of them, a string of them that makes sense. That would help with the signal timing coordination. Because otherwise you're like, stopping and at every red light sort of unexpected. That's also not a safe operation matter. If you have any specific location of your concern and things, feel free to let us know.
Yeah, like I'm thinking along Washington Boulevard next to Cardinal Elementary School, and there's Swanson, and yet, the one next to the light right adjacent to Cardinal, and then the next one in Westover Village. I mean, these are not coordinated. And could be, but I see we have more hands, so let's see who is first, Randy
Cynthia,
or Steve?
Cynthia, really quick, we may have to wrap it up somewhat soon because we do have one more staff speaker, and I just want to be respectful of everyone's time.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll say something because I think I would like to support Dana on the bill stuffers. I don't think you're going to reach any alcoholics, but if you want to do it that way, that's fine. What I've never seen and what I don't believe anybody has ever done in Arlington is to try to educate drivers on what to do when they get to a flashing yellow light. Most people don't know. And of course, the chaos theory that if they don't know, they'll slow down more, maybe that works. But on the other hand, those lights have been put in everywhere, and some of them are the hawk lights, some of them are not. Nobody knows what to do. Nobody's ever told us what to do. Nobody's ever told the driver what to do, and much less the pedestrian. And as Cynthia says, it gives a false sense of security to some people. So I think maybe you might want to look at the bill stuffers, but maybe somewhere else. That's not the only way to get to people. But I don't think we should be introducing new traffic features without trying to educate the drivers who are going to run into them on their next drive.
Thank you. Yeah, we did update our website and we sent a newsletter out, expressing, we used some graphics we borrowed from a different jurisdiction on how to use those, but there's always way to reach more folks. And that is where we need help too. So if you all are looking ways to help contribute to the effort, we are always looking for partners in community education. The Commission on Aging recently helped to create a flyer for older adults to help them kind of engage more as they try to cross the street. So like, if you all have ideas for that, we would love it. And I think I will take this feedback because this Treasury partnership is real. And I think it would be a really great way to educate people. So I am going to take your feedback to heart because I do want it to be effective.
And one more question from Steve.
Yeah, so I think one thing that would definitely enhance safety would be to kind of change the fundamental policy around walk signals. A walk signal should always say walk unless it's unsafe to do so. Right now, it's sort of like arbitrarily decided by someone who engineers an intersection that it should always say don't walk unless they've decided to make it say walk. And there are lots of places where the green signal is long enough, more than long enough for whatever that period of time is necessary to cross that signal would be for someone to cross safely. And yet it says don't walk. And what happens over time is that pedestrians will encounter these types of intersections. They'll note that, hey, they may get there more than once. It's actually safe for me to cross, even though it says don't walk. All these cars are stopped. They're stopped here for a long time. And then they tend to take chances. If a pedestrian knew that when they saw a walk signal, it meant it was always safe, and if they saw a don't walk, they knew it meant it was unsafe, then behaviors would be consistent. So I think it's really important for the designers, and anytime we go back and change the signalization, to start with the fundamental change in the way we address walk signals. You should always say walk unless it's unsafe.
Great, thank you. I agree with that philosophy, and I will make sure. I think we're obviously following federal guidelines, but whatever we're able to do within that, I think I'll talk with our signal team and see what's possible. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. This has been really helpful.
Appreciate it.
And now we have Bob Upton, right?
Good evening, all. I'm Bob Upton. I'm one of three area park managers in the county. My areas of responsibility of the 51 parks I manage, most of them are north of I-66, but I am also the paved trails manager in the county. Most of you know Custis Trail, 4 Mile Run, 110, Bluemont Junction. Those are the majority of the ones that I have responsibility for. The WNOD Trail does not fall under my responsibility. Mount Vernon is not mine. A lot of those little mixed trails you see in Colonial Village are not my responsibility. So I just wanted to give you a heads up on that. Just to give you a little bit about our trails maintenance program, our trails maintenance program budget is $250,000. And I have one full-time employee. So that covers about the 39 miles of trails that we have responsibility for. During the peak season, the way we look at peak season is going to be your warmer months, probably mid to late March through, depending upon how cold the fall is, we can go as late as mid-November. And about 10 to 15% of our staff time is done dealing with graffiti. We really spend a lot of time on dealing with graffiti, whether it's on the trail itself, whether it's on the sound walls, you name it. What we're dealing with it. And some of it's relatively easy that I can take care of. It's just a matter of taking some spray paint and going over top of it. But some of this is requires a couple of hours of work. So if you've ever gone down the WNOD Trail, those sound wall, that long section between Brandymore Castle and where the Custis Trail intersects, a lot of times that those sound walls can get hit pretty good, and the guys, the team will spend quite a bit of time out there. What we've been working on recently is in conjunction with Vision Zero. We have started spending a lot of time on the Custis Trail, opening up what I'm going to refer to as the spurs. We spent some time on the Custis Trail between North Harrison Street and over by Westover Park. There's over by North Jefferson. There's a couple of spurs from there leading to the road that we opened up. If you follow the Custis Trail east, instead of going to the roundabout and going under 66, if you go further up and you take the pedestrian bridge overpass, that whole section, we did a lot of defoliage and we had crews come in and clean up. They cleaned out a lot of the culvert that's in there. I'm sure most of you who take Custis Trail have seen a lot of the work that was done on the S-curve. The idea is that what we're trying to do is we're trying to open up the line of sight. So as cyclists, pedestrians, or who's ever using the trail is not surprised by anything. I've been given a list of questions that I got. I'm going to kind of run through these real quick, and I'm just going to get them in the order that I got them. The first two came from Randy. It says the Friends of the Mount Vernon Trail have gasoline-powered grinder that grinds down tree root heaves. We need one of those. We occasionally are able to go out and do a little asphalt repair work where we will go out, and we've done this before. We've gone out to the S-curve. We'll go ahead and dig up the asphalt. We'll cut the tree roots out, and then we'll do like a cold or a hot patch replacement. Sometimes I'm able to get Hector from DES, the asphalt team, will come out, and if it's a small section, maybe 25, 30, 50 feet, they can come out and do a mill and repave. When we start talking about quarter-mile sections, even a couple of 100 yards, it's, again, with a $250,000 budget, for me to do something like that, I'd lose at least a quarter of my budget just to have a mill and pave done. So those big projects, Bluemont Junction, a lot of the work, 95% of the mill and repave that you've seen either on the 4 Mile Run, the Donaldson Run Trail, or Custis has been done by our PDD team. I just don't have the funding for that. Let's see the next question.
Now, let me just interrupt real quick. I don't think that was Randy's question. Right, he was suggesting not a complete change, but just a grinder. I mean, literally, this tiny little not-for-profit that gets by on a shoestring has managed to get themselves a grinder machine, and they more or less fixed that ramp up to the Roosevelt Bridge from the Roosevelt Island parking lot in a morning, just like with a grinder. They didn't have to hire a contractor to come and mill and now it's not perfect. It's not smooth as butter, but I got to tell you, it is way better than it used to be. So getting out there and just like grinding down a couple of root heaves is not going to take, millions of dollars from your tens of thousands from your budget. It's a couple of $100 to go out for someone to spend a morning, grinding down a few root heaves. So I think that's what Randy was suggesting, was simple, low cost opportunities, not big quarter mile fixes.
No, I understood the question. And what I was saying and I used the S curves as an example, we were able to go out there, dig it up. It was a 2.5 hour project. My point is that because of my budget, when we start looking at some of these longer projects, that is something that would have to go to PDD. That is not, I don't have the financing for that.
Yeah, again, I think this question is, do you have a grinder?
No, because we don't need one.
I would disagree with that, but go on.
Okay, thank you. Number 2, the WNOD trail between Brandymore Castle Marker and Sycamore Street needs attention. We have worn away the stripe that signals the turn to the basketball court where the trail meets the wide pavement that was once the end of North Roosevelt Street. Ultimately, we need to remove the excess pavement, realign the trail, but for now, we just help first-time users figure out where the trail goes. The stripe should be painted to avoid making the turn slippery with thermoset, even though that means periodic repainting. Yes, that is one of our plans. I am working with Jen Spy, who is our lining contractor for the trail. And we have 110 sections of the Custis Trail, sections of 4 Mile Run, and this section in general are all, I'm basically waiting to get in touch with them so I can get quotes to have that done. So yes, to answer your question, that is something that will be addressed. As far as removing some of the asphalt, there are some things that are in the works right now that I can't get into, but as of right now, the lining will be done. I don't know if the asphalt's going to be done right away. And just the one as far as the question about the trail under Sycamore Street would have to go to PDD. The last one is on the other side of Sycamore, the curb cut where the trail stub meets North Van Buren Street has a jarring edge that could be ground down. If we've had grinders come in before, we use the contractor for that. I would not bring a contractor in just to do this. But as we move forward and we find areas where we can grind down these little lips, I can certainly put that on the list of things to be done. Okay, I'll give you Cody had one with regards to the lip on the traffic circle that I'm calling it on the Custis Trail, and I believe this is where we're talking about this. You go under Brandy, just as you make that left-hand turn, you go under 66 where Westover is. That was a DES project, and my guess is the lip was put in for a reason, and I'm going to guess that it was for much like we have for cars, just to kind of slow people down because of that wicked right-hand turn if you're coming under the bridge. So that would be a question for DES. Okay, Jillian had some questions about one particular about Gunston Park. One of the things, paved trails that are inside of a park that really don't connect to, say, one of the commuter trails, and I say commuter, I'm talking about Custis, 4 Mile Run, Bluemont Junction. These internal trails would be the responsibility of the park manager. So, for instance, her concern was about the condition of the Gunston Trail. That is something that I pass along to the park manager. So when you have those types of concerns, by all means, let us know, and I can reach out to the appropriate staff so they can address it. Steve-O had a question about the Washington Boulevard Trail. It does not drain, leaves and debris are collected. I have not had a chance to get out there and look at that yet, and I'm kind of waiting for a nice, good rainy day so I can take pictures, I can document it, and then I can work with PDD.
It's there now. I mean, the water is collected there literally right now. It's still there. You don't have to wait for a rainy day.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the other question was, there's a separate question about removing the bollard at the entrance to Benjamin Banneker. There's two bollards. Which one? I'm assuming we're talking about the one off of Van Buren Street. Okay. As of right now, we don't intend to. Most of our areas that you come into have some sort of, we have those knockdown bollards. As of right now, we're going to plan on keeping it there.
So I'm going to push back on that, because the Federal Highway Administration advises against using bollards as a deterrent only in cases where there has been a history of encroachment, and only after all other interventions have been attempted first, like signage, paint, and other things. They are in fact a danger and a hazard to trail users. People have been injured and killed by them. And leaving essentially a telephone pole in the middle of the street is something we would never do, nor should we leave a known hazard in the middle of a trail without having good reason. Putting up a sign, no motorized vehicles or something like that, until we learn that it's not working, we should never use a bollard. That's Federal Highway Administration guidance. So if Arlington, for some reason, feels it knows more than the Federal Highway Administration about safety on trails, then please give us your research that shows that that is true.
I think in some instances, kind of like we were talking about before earlier, where there's like legacies that kind of just occur. Maybe this is a situation where we look to see why that exists, what the standards are behind that, and then get back to you on that.
Thank you. And I believe the last one I have is from Peter Stokely talking about Rock Spring Park. And this is one of those instances where this trail is in one of my areas of responsibility. I did go out and look at it, and there is some justification for having to do some work out there. So I'll be working with a contractor to get out and see exactly what we can do as far as making that safer, so you don't have that drop off. So, and the rest of those questions that were submitted would go to PDD.
And I have a quick kind of written update from the PDD team on some of those questions, mostly just a list of what is looking at to be repaved in 2023. We have about one minute left of Bob's time. Does anyone else have a question? Well, thank you, Bob.
Thank you so very much. Really appreciate it. And I'm still singing your praises every time I ride through the stream bed that you fixed the day after our last visit with you. So thank you.
All right, you all have a nice evening.
Thank you.
I can just share, Cynthia, if this is okay with you, I can just share really quickly what the PDD team, so that's the team that does kind of the long range planning, the larger, more expensive kind of trail remilling and repaving projects. Bob wasn't able to attend tonight. He is going to attend the PAC meeting on Wednesday to talk about the asphalt trail inventory they did. So if someone, anyone's interested in hearing that, you can attend the PAC meeting or watch that recording. But in the meantime, can everyone see my screen? Nice. So Bob sent this over, and this is a map. You can see the areas that are highlighted in red are some of the areas that they're hoping to remill and repave this year. So that includes a portion of the Ballston Pond Park Trail, some of Bon Air Park Trail, which is the Custis Trail to the Rose Garden, a portion of the Custis Trail. It's the north side, I-66 from Glebe Road to North Taylor. We also have one of the Custis Trail connectors, so kind of one of those spurs that Bob was mentioning. It's the south side of 66 from the underpass to Westover Park to 9th Road in Jacksonville. We also have a portion of the Bluemont Junction Trail along North Kensington Street to North Carlin Springs Road. 4 Mile Run Trail. This is a pretty small section, but definitely needs some work. It's Bluemont Park from the intersection of the Bluemont Junction Trail to the more recently paved trail segment. So basically kind of just connecting the recently paved trail with basically improving the intersection. And then the 4 Mile Run Trail, north side of George Mason Drive from below bridge to the roadway. 4 Mile Run Trail, south side of George Mason Drive from below the bridge. And then just some portions of the 4 Mile Run Trail in 4 Mile Run Park from Glebe to Troy Park, and then Route 110 Trail. I know that was a lot. That was a lot of information. I can ask them about when this information will be public. If it is already public, might be easier if I could just send that list to the group. But that's what the PDD is planning on remilling and repaving for this year. And a lot of this, like I just mentioned, is coming from this inventory that they did. So essentially, they hired a contractor who actually drove where they could on all the trails and used this tool to assess the pavement condition. So it's either essentially poor, passable, or excellent. So everything that is on this list was a poor condition. So essentially the way that they're prioritizing this is by focusing on areas where the pavement is in the worst condition and really building up from there. I think I saw a hand up. Dana, was that you?
Yeah. Can you engage, can you get with them and have them describe their design standards? What we've done for the last 40 years is we strip off the sod, we put down an inch of gravel, and then we throw some asphalt down. And then we get root heaves, and we're surprised at the root heaves. If we design these things, if we actually engineer the trails the way we engineer our roads, we'd likely get a hell of a lot more service out of them.
So almost like construction standards, essentially, and trail standards.
Why, yes. If we're going to build a trail, let's design the trail before we build it.
Yeah, I'm sure they have something in place, but we have the Trails Coordination Team meeting, which is a monthly meeting with DPR and DES staff. And I'll add this to the agenda for the March meeting to see what their current policy is.
Okay. And then can you have the DES design team critique it?
We can have a conversation about it. I'm curious to see what we do differently, what we do the same, but we can definitely discuss that across departments.
Yeah, I think it's a matter of depth.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I'll have to see if it's the same for all trails. It's situational, but that's a good question.
Thank you.
So, showing my ignorance here, you lost me on the acronym. What is this department that does the milling and paving? And you said PDD?
I apologize. Yeah, so essentially, I wonder if I can even pull this up. So essentially, DPR, Department of Parks and Recreation, has different bureaus similarly to how, DOT has Transportation Engineering and Operations or Transit. So they have PDD, which I believe is Planning and Development Division. So basically, that's more long range planning. Whereas Bob Upton, who just spoke, is it's operations essentially. And I see Bob still on. So if I said something that's utterly incorrect, please correct me, because I know there's PDD and I believe there's PNR. There's quite a few different divisions and bureaus. But essentially, that's why Bob has a different budget than PDD, because one's kind of like long-term, larger projects, and one's like really dealing with the issues that are on the ground right now.
Thank you.
I always appreciate an acronym check.
Dana, is your hand up again, or is it up from before?
It was vestigial.
Okay. So should we do a part B of the organizational chart now, or?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, so we had some empty time. So Cynthia recommended talking a little about the org chart, and then I have just a few updates, really focusing on the engaged page because, like Christine mentioned, there's some Vision Zero engagement coming up, but there's also a few other items that I want to share with the group. Let me pull up this DES org chart. And I do have to say that I updated just the DOT portion. Let's see. Okay, so this is the Department of Environmental Services, which is totally separate from the Department of Parks and Recreation, just to kind of preface that. So we have this director, which is Greg Emanuel, and then the Chief Operating Officer, which is Michael Moon, who is still in, they're both still in these positions. If I zoom in, see on transportation. So we're looking in this bottom right-hand corner. You can see that the Deputy Director of Transportation and Development, who just spoke today, is Hui. We have Sarah Crawford as the Assistant Director. I believe she's attended some of these meetings as well. And then if you go down here, we have the different bureaus. So essentially these are bureaus within transportation or Department of Transportation. So first we have TE&O, and that's Transportation Engineering and Operations. Dan Neighbors is currently acting as the bureau chief, which I know he's attended quite a few of these meetings. And so TE&O, they do everything with signals, safety, Vision Zero. So that's kind of basically Hui and Christine, who you heard from today, are both well, Hui was the bureau chief in TE&O, and Christine is housed in TE&O as well. So they're doing a lot of engineering, but also, like I just mentioned, operations. Then you have transportation planning, and the bureau chief is Valerie Mosley, who's also attended these meetings. Transportation planning is often called TPCPM. So that's transportation planning and capital project management, because it's really divided into kind of two groups. So you have transportation planners, which are really working on studies, kind of more long range planning, but also quick builds. And that includes, David Patton, myself. And then we also have capital projects managers. So that's Jason Windstrom's team. And those are people that are working on large scale capital projects who also attended these meetings. And then we move over here to transit. Lynn Rivers is the bureau chief here. And I know Pierre and some other transit folks have attended these meetings. And I should mention they have the Transit Advisory Committee. So they have kind of a committee that is similar to the BAC and PAC. They obviously oversee transit operations. And then we have commuter services. Oftentimes it's referred to as ACCS, Arlington County Commuter Services. And this is overseen by James Larson. They do a lot with cabbie bikes, with micromobility, shared use devices. So essentially those e-bikes, also the scooters. And so essentially, and I think Henry Dunbar works with them as well. And then finally, we have development services with Louis Araya, who is the bureau chief. And that's all of that kind of private development that we were talking about earlier. A lot of that goes through their department. Then we have departments that aren't necessarily within the Department of Transportation, but we work with quite often. So I'm actually going to go over to, you can see facilities and engineering. We work quite often with Engineering Bureau, which you can see here. Adil is the chief of EB or Engineering Bureau, and we work quite often with them because in a lot of cases, they will do the in-house engineering for, capital improvement projects or some of these quick build projects that are being implemented through Vision Zero. So we work with them quite closely. We also work quite closely with sustainability and environmental management. They have a lot of input on our transportation studies, specifically when it comes to trails. And then you can see we also have a Deputy Director of Operations, Mike Collins. And I think out of this group, we probably work most closely with Water, Sewer, Streets, which is sometimes known as WSS if you see an acronym. So they're working on quite a few projects with us. That's a lot of, curb and gutter, that's utilities, and there's a lot of coordination that's going on with them. And then also solid waste, which you can see down here with the bureau chief being Eric Grabowski. They do all of the on-street bike lane clearing. So we work with them. And I think one thing that we really want to work on is working more closely with them on how we can better design our projects. When they're in this stage over here of capital project management and planning and engineering, how we can make them so that they're easier for Solid Waste Bureau to maintain in the future. Because the better we can maintain them, the better and longer they will last, and it will just be easier for everyone. So that's kind of a very broad overview of the org chart, just for DES, which is the Department of Environmental Services. Does anyone have any questions? Okay.
Is this document going to be provided?
First of all, I need to make sure that everything's updated because I know the DOT was updated, but I need to make sure everything else is. Yeah, and then I'll see if I can share that out.
And if you could please get, share it with DPR and get them to pony up a copy of theirs.
Yeah, at the Trails Coordination meeting, I'll see. I'm sure DPR has their own org chart as well.
Thank you.
Yep, so that is kind of a brief overview of the DES org chart and then who kind of this group would be likely to kind of hear from or work with most often. And briefly, I just want to go through a few updates for this group. I know that Christine talked about the Vision Zero annual report and open house on April 26th. We have a few other things coming up. So one thing of note, especially for this group, we have the South George Mason multimodal transportation study. So we have phase 3 of engagement that will be March 22nd. We'll be having a virtual community meeting. So that's a Wednesday. And we'll be looking at intersections, specifically the intersection of South George Mason Drive and Arlington Boulevard, Columbia Pike, and South 4 Mile Run Drive. There will be an online questionnaire that opens on the 22nd that will be open for a month. We'll also be having pop-ups at Barcroft Apartments and possibly other areas around the county. So there'll be plenty of time for engagement. Feel free to kind of help spread the word, and I hope to see you there. I'm going to send a flyer to Cynthia, and feel free to send it around. We're hoping to have yard signs, flyers, and just getting the word out as much as possible. We also have a performance parking pilot, and I'll put this all in the chat. So essentially, there was a community kickoff meeting for this February 23rd of this year. Just kind of an idea of what this is. So essentially, this pilot project is about 4,500 metered parking spaces, mainly in the Rosslyn-Ballston corridor and Richmond Highway corridor. And most of these spaces included in the pilot are on-street parking. So essentially what they're going to do is put in-ground sensors to provide real-time occupancy information for each of the parking spaces included in the project area. The sensors can detect the presence or absence of a vehicle, the duration of stay. There's no camera technology that's being used, and there's no, personal identifying information. But basically, once they have all this initial occupancy data, they can kind of anticipate applying pricing tools to the pilot project corridors on a quarterly basis, changing prices up or down across these 4,500 parking spaces included in the pilot. So this is something, like I mentioned, that kicked off on February 23rd, but you can still share your feedback online at this time. So I will kind of put that in the chat. There's a project page if you want to learn more, but it's something that's happening now. And then last, but certainly not least, there will be a Crystal City, Pentagon City area open house that is in person Monday, March 27th, and this is at the Long Bridge Aquatic Center from 4 to 7 p.m. And I'm going to put all of these with links in the chat. This is also all on the Engage page, which I can link as well. Those are all of the engagement opportunities that I have for now. Any questions? Okay.
Wonderful. Um, does anyone have anything else to say? All right. I think we are. Yeah.
I was
Raymond.
Raymond Duran here with Bike Arlington. How's everyone doing? Two updates. Registration for Bike to Work Day is live, so you can go over to the MCOG website. I could drop it in the chat in a second here. Also, if you know anyone who doesn't know how to ride a bike, the adult learn to ride classes led by WABA is also open now. And you can see the upcoming classes too on their website, and I'll drop that in the chat too in a second here. Those are my two updates.
Wonderful. Thank you. Who else has a comment, question, or update, or simply wants to say hello? Okay.
This was a really good meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. I agree. Wonderful to have our guests and really good discussions. All right. Thank you all so very much. And it is 8:48. I think this is this is a miracle. We actually give you back time. So everyone have a wonderful evening and stay safe. All right. Thank you all.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Cynthia.
Have a good
Thanks,
night.
everyone.
Thank you. Bye.